A young billionaire found homeless twin girls crying and pointing to an abandoned house. Just a few minutes later, he entered that house and broke down in tears when he saw what was inside. The sun was setting on the horizon, painting the sky with orange hues that contrasted against the dark clouds rolling in. Jack Thompson adjusted his sunglasses as his latest model Mercedes glided along the winding country road. The silence inside the car was broken only by the soft purr of the engine and the occasional GPS alert, indicating he was 40 minutes away from his next meeting. At 32, Jack had built an empire. His tech company was about to launch an innovation that promised to revolutionize the market, and that meeting with rural investors was just another step toward his vision for the future. However, destiny had other plans for that autumn afternoon. The first raindrop hit the windshield at the exact moment his eyes caught an unusual movement by the side of the road. Initially, he thought it was just the wind rustling the shrubs, but something made him slow down. That's when he saw them. Two small figures, practically identical, standing on the dusty roadside. Jack's heart raced. Two children, no older than 4, were alone in that deserted place. Their dresses, which must have once been white, were stained and dirty. Their blonde hair tangled, framed pale faces marked by tears. He pressed the brake, carefully steering the car onto the shoulder. The rain started to fall more heavily, yet the girls stood as still as statues, their deep blue eyes locked on him with a mix of fear and pleading that struck him like a punch in the stomach. "Oh my God," he muttered, switching off the car. Years of dealing with the toughest executives hadn't prepared him for that moment. What were two children doing alone out there? Where were their parents? Taking a deep breath, Jack opened the car door. The rain was now falling steadily, and the air smelled strongly of wet earth. The girls took a small step back when he got out, but did not run. Instead, they started pointing frantically at something behind him. "It's okay," he said softly, holding his hands up in what he hoped was a reassuring gesture. "I won't hurt you. Where are your parents?" The twins, since they clearly were twins, did not reply. They kept pointing, their little fingers directed at something beyond him. Jack turned slowly in that direction, and that was when he saw it. An old house, partially hidden by tall trees and dense undergrowth. Even from a distance, he could tell it had been abandoned for years. "Is someone there?" he asked, turning back to the girls. "Do you live in that place?" One of them stepped forward. Her lips trembled, though not with cold. "Help," she whispered so quietly that, with the rain, he almost didn't hear. "Please." The other girl held her sister's hand, and Jack noticed the small fingers were scraped, with fresh scratches. His instincts told him something was very wrong, and his rational mind tried to analyze the possibilities. Should he call the police? An ambulance? But what if someone was indeed injured in that house and needed immediate help? The rain fell harder by the second, and the girls were beginning to shiver. Jack took off his coat and, moving slowly so as not to scare them, approached. "Can I put this on you? It's getting cold." To his surprise, the girls did not recoil. They allowed him to cover them with his coat, big enough to wrap them both. That was when he saw up close the faint bruises on their arms, recent marks that made his blood boil. "What are your names?" he tried again, keeping his voice calm, despite the anger that rose in him toward whoever had hurt these children. "Sophie," murmured the one who had spoken, then pointing at her sister, "Emma." "Sophie and Emma," Jack repeated, trying to win their trust. "I'm Jack. Is someone hurt in that house?" The two nodded in unison, and fresh tears began streaming down Emma's face. Sophie pulled her sister close, showing a surprising strength for someone so small. Jack pulled out his cell phone, but there was no signal in that remote area. He looked again at the abandoned house, then at the drenched girls in the rain. He couldn't leave them there, but he also couldn't simply take them and go. What if someone truly needed help in that place? "Would you like to get in the car? It's dry and warm inside," he offered, pointing to the Mercedes. The girls hesitated, exchanging that silent communication only twins seem able to share. Finally, Sophie spoke again. "Will you help?" "I promise I'll help," Jack replied, and there must have been something in his voice that convinced the girls because they let him lead them to the car. After settling them in the back seat, Jack turned on the heater and took out some water bottles from the glove compartment. The girls drank thirstily, and he noticed how their small hands shook while holding the bottles. "Are you hurt? Did someone do this to you?" he asked gently. But the twins only looked back at the house, their expressions rife with concern. Rain now fell in sheets, turning the afternoon into an early dusk. Through the foggy windshield, the abandoned house looked even more sinister, its windows black like empty eyes staring at them. Jack knew he had to make a decision. His phone was still out of signal. The girls clearly needed help, and someone might be hurt in that house. Years of making high-stakes corporate decisions seemed trivial compared to the pressure he felt now. "Stay here, okay? I'll take a quick look inside the house," he said more to himself than to the silent girls. But as he went to open the door, Sophie clutched his arm with surprising strength. "Together," she said, her voice soft but unwavering. "We go together." Emma nodded, and something in their looks told Jack they wouldn't stay put in the car no matter what he said. Perhaps they feared being left again, or maybe they knew they needed to show him something specific in the house. The rain kept pouring relentlessly as Jack took a flashlight from the glove box. The girls left the car, still wrapped in his too big coat, and instinctively held onto his hands, Sophie on the right, Emma on the left. While they walked toward the abandoned house, Jack Thompson, the billionaire used to having every detail under control, suddenly felt entirely out of his comfort zone. He had no idea what he would find beyond that weathered door, but something told him his life was about to change forever. What he did not know was how right he was. The door creaked ominously when Jack pushed it, the sound echoing through the empty structure of the abandoned house. His flashlight beam cut through the darkness, revealing an entrance hall seemingly frozen in time. Sophie and Emma tightened their hold on his hands, leading him with determined steps through the gloom. The smell was the first thing that hit him, a suffocating mix of mildew, rotting wood, and something else, something that made his stomach churn. Rain dripped through holes in the ceiling, forming small puddles on the stained hardwood floor. Wallpaper, once fancy, peeled in strips from the walls like old skin. "Over here," Sophie whispered, pulling him toward what once must have been the living room. The beam of the flashlight showed furniture draped in dusty sheets, like silent ghosts standing watch. An old couch lay overturned, its foam filling exposed like an open wound. Slivers of a shattered mirror gleamed on the floor like dirty shards of diamond, reflecting the light in wild patterns. It was then that he saw her. In the center of the room, half concealed by an overturned armchair, lay an elderly woman. Her gray hair was stained red on one side, and her pale face clashed sharply with the dark floorboards. "Oh my God," Jack breathed, releasing the girl's hands and rushing to the woman. He kneeled beside her, feeling the wet floor seep into his expensive trousers. His fingertips found the woman's pulse, weak but present. The twins immediately took positions on the other side of her body, their small faces showing a concern beyond their years. Emma gently touched the woman's face, while Sophie held her wrinkled hand. "Grandma Claire," Emma whispered, voice trembling. It was the first time Jack heard her speak. "Claire? Is that her name?" Jack asked, already pulling out his phone again, desperate for a signal. Nothing. "She's your grandmother." The girls exchanged glances but didn't answer. Jack noticed a dry trail of blood running from Claire's temple, likely from a fall. Her face was lined by years of sun and worry, yet still held a certain dignity, even unconscious. A crack of thunder made the house's windows rattle in their frames. The rain now fell in torrential sheets, turning the holes in the roof into miniature waterfalls. Jack removed his suit jacket and placed it over Claire, hoping to keep her warm. "I need to get help," he said, more to himself than to the girls. "She needs a doctor." But as he moved to stand, Claire moaned softly. Her eyes opened, a dull blue, like overwashed denim, and they stayed unfocused for a moment before catching sight of the twins. "My little ones," she whispered, her voice husky and frail. "Are you all right?" "Yes, Grandma Claire," Sophie replied. Emma nodded, tears rolling silently down her grimy cheeks. Claire's gaze then landed on Jack, and he watched fear cross her wrinkled face. She tried to shift, but he gently restrained her. "Please, don't move," he said. "You're hurt." "My name is Jack Thompson. I found the girls on the roadside. They brought me here." Claire relaxed a fraction, but her eyes stayed wary. "The girls," she murmured. "I need to protect." "They're safe," Jack assured her, noticing how the twins crept closer to Claire, like young animals seeking shelter. "But you need medical help. I'll see if I can get a signal to call an ambulance." While he spoke, he scanned the room, noticing details he'd missed earlier. In one corner stood a small stack of well-worn children's books. Nearby, 2 matching teddy bears, threadbare but obviously loved. And on one wall, partly hidden by a torn curtain, hung a calendar marked with a date from 3 years ago. Someone had been living here. This was not just an empty house, it was a refuge. Claire tried to speak again, but her voice faltered. Jack noticed her breathing growing shallower. "I'll go out to the car," he said, rising. "Maybe I can get a signal out there." The girls grew restless, but Claire weakly squeezed their hands. "Go with him," she whispered. "I trust in you." Sophie and Emma hesitated briefly, then stood in perfect synchronicity. Jack realized that, despite their fear, they also showed a remarkable fortitude. Walking back through the dark hallway, Jack couldn't help but notice even more signs that someone had inhabited this place. A broom propped in the corner, dishes stacked neatly on a makeshift shelf, a small pile of folded clothes on a battered chair. Someone had turned this ruin into a home. Stepping into the storm once more, Jack opened the back door of the car for the girls, then slid into the driver's seat himself, starting the engine so he could charge his phone. He noticed a faint signal, just a single bar, but maybe it would be enough. His hands shook slightly as he dialed 911. Waiting for the call to connect, he glanced in the rearview mirror at the twins. They sat quietly, their small hands clasped together, staring through the sheets of rain at the old house. 911, what's your emergency?" The dispatcher's voice never sounded so welcome. Jack quickly explained the situation, giving the coordinates from his GPS. "An ambulance is on its way, sir. Please remain with the victim and keep her warm and still." Jack ended the call and turned to the girls. "Help is coming. Let's go back inside to stay with Grandma Claire." Once again, the twins exchanged looks as though sharing a secret larger than their 4 years of life would suggest. Back in the living room, Claire was conscious, though her eyes were half open. Jack knelt beside her, checking her pulse, still weak but steady. "An ambulance is on the way," he reassured her softly. "Everything will be all right." Claire opened her eyes, doing her best to focus on him. "The girls," she murmured. Promise to protect them." There was an urgency in her voice that made Jack bend closer. "They're safe," he repeated. "I'll make sure they're okay." A tiny smile flickered across Claire's features, and she relaxed a little. The twins nestled beside her, one on each side, like small guardian angels. The faint sound of sirens cut through the roar of the rain. Jack stood, waving his flashlight at a broken window to guide the paramedics. While he waited, he again took in the sight of the trio on the floor, an elderly woman and 2 identical girls. Something about it stirred him to the core, beyond just the obvious tragedy. What had forced an old woman and 2 small children to hide out in that abandoned house? Who or what were they running from? And why had the girls chosen him for help? While the ambulance had yet to arrive, he needed to do everything possible to assist Claire and the twins. Years ago, in the early days of building his empire, Jack insisted every executive at his company take an advanced first aid course. "You never know when you might need to save a life," he would tell them, much to the shock of employees who saw him only as a bottom-line businessman. And now, kneeling on the dusty floor of that old house, that training was more precious than any $1 million contract. "Sophie, Emma," he called gently, "I need your help, okay?" The girls nodded in sync, their blue eyes trained on him. "Can you hold the flashlight for me?" Sophie took the flashlight in her small hands, aiming the beam exactly where Jack needed it. It was astonishing how intuitively the twins seemed to anticipate what was required, moving with a maturity well beyond their years. Jack slipped off his Italian silk tie and folded it carefully, making a makeshift compress for the wound on Claire's head. With gentle yet firm movements, he began to clean the dried blood with his handkerchief, dampened by one of the water bottles he'd taken from the car. "This might sting a little, Miss Claire," he warned, noting how her eyes opened and closed, fighting to remain conscious. "I need to clean this so you don't get an infection." Claire let out a faint groan but didn't move. Emma instantly grasped the older woman's hand, offering silent comfort. Jack couldn't help noticing the contrast between their tiny, clean hands and Claire's weathered, calloused fingers. "Can you tell me if anything else hurts?" he asked, as he carefully checked her vital signs, just as he'd learned in class. "Did you move after you fell?" "No, didn't move," Claire managed, voice barely audible. "The girls wouldn't let me." Jack cast an admiring look at the twins. They had done exactly the right thing. Keeping a possibly head-injured person still was crucial. "You two did great," he praised them, watching a tiny spark of pride cross their faces. The rain continued pouring outside, and through the broken windows, Jack saw lightning illuminate the darkening sky. The air was heavy with humidity and tension, but he kept his voice calm, his actions precise. Using techniques he'd never expected to employ beyond the training room, Jack checked Claire's pupils with the flashlight beam. They reacted normally, which was a good sign. Her breathing was regular, if somewhat shallow, and though her pulse was weak, it held steady. "I'm going to the car to grab more water," he said, standing up. But before he could take a step, two little hands grasped his arms. "Don't go," Sophie pleaded, her voice small yet firm. "Just to the car," Jack reassured her, surprised at the strength of the bond he already felt with these children. "I promise I'll be right back." The girls exchanged a look, one of those silent twin conversations. Finally, Emma let go of his arm and accepted the car key he offered. "I'll go," she said, voice nearly a whisper. "Sophie stays—" Jack hesitated, but something in Emma's determined gaze made him nod. From the doorway, he watched her dash through the rain, swiftly avoiding the growing puddles. Within seconds, she was back, drenched but carrying 2 bottles of water and a small first aid kit he always kept in the glove box. "Thank you, Emma," he said, taking the items and quickly using his sleeve to dry her face. She allowed the gesture with a trust that floored him. From the kit, Jack took antiseptic and a few bandages. As he cleaned and dressed Claire's wound more thoroughly, he started to speak softly, partly to keep the older woman conscious, partly to calm the twins. "You know, when I was young, I wanted to be a doctor," he said while working with practiced efficiency. "I ended up going down a different path, but I never lost my interest in taking care of people. That's why I insist everyone at my company learns first aid." Claire's eyes opened, focusing on him with more clarity than before. "You seem good at it," she murmured. "Years of practice," he replied with a slight smile. "Though usually I only need these skills if a high-powered executive faints during a major presentation." A soft, unexpected sound filled the air. The twins were giggling. It was a pure, crystalline sound that seemed to brighten even the darkest corners of that abandoned house. Jack felt his heart clench, realizing it was likely the first time he'd heard them laugh. The moment was cut short by the sound of sirens, now very close. Red and blue lights began dancing on the walls through the broken windows. "Help is here," Jack announced, noting how the girls instantly tensed up. "It's all right. They're paramedics, and they're going to help Ms. Claire." But there was something in the twins' expressions that worried him, a deep-seated fear that went beyond the natural anxiety children feel around strangers. Claire seemed distressed as well, her fingers weakly pressing Sophie's hand. "Jack," Claire called, her voice stronger than before. "The girls. I'll take care of them," he promised, without hesitation. "I won't let anything happen to you either. Trust me." The sound of heavy boots and professional voices filled the hallway. Jack stood to guide the paramedics, but his gaze lingered on the 3, an elderly lady and 2 little girls who defended her as fiercely as she had clearly defended them. In that moment, Jack Thompson, the billionaire renowned for his ruthless business manner, made himself a silent vow. Whatever the mystery was behind that situation, he would do everything in his power to protect this unlikely family. Little did he know that promise would change his life forever. The hospital corridor seemed endless. its white walls reflecting the soft hum of fluorescent lighting overhead. Jack paced back and forth, his Italian leather shoes making a rhythmic sound against the vinyl floor. Sophie and Emma sat in oversized chairs, their legs dangling without reaching the floor, wearing the hospital clothes they'd been given after their baths and initial exams. 3 hours had passed since they'd arrived at the emergency room. Claire was in the examination room, and the doctors had said her condition was delicate. A CT scan revealed a subdural hematoma, words that made Jack's stomach knot when the physician had spoken them. "Mr. Thompson." Jack turned around to see a middle-aged woman with red-framed glasses and a badge identifying her as Dr. Marina Santos, the hospital's social worker. "The girls are physically fine," she began, looking through her notes. "Some scrapes and mild signs of malnutrition, but nothing severe. However," she hesitated, glancing meaningfully at the twins, who observed everything with alert eyes. Jack caught the hint. Kneeling in front of the girls, he spoke gently. "Sophie, Emma, could you stay right here for a minute? I promise I'll be just over there, where you can still see me, okay?" The twins shared one of their characteristic silent looks, then nodded. Jack noticed they had not let go of each other's hands since arriving at the hospital. A few steps away, Dr. Santos lowered her voice. "Mr. Thompson, we have a problem. We can't find any official record of these children. No birth certificates, no medical history, nothing." A sinking feeling spread through Jack's chest. "What about Miss Claire?" "Claire Dupont, 68 years old. We found some old records, but..." She consulted her notes again. "She practically dropped off the grid about 4 years ago." Before Jack could wrap his mind around it, a nurse appeared in the corridor. "The patient is asking for Mr. Thompson." Jack cast a worried glance at the twins, but Dr. Santos nodded. "I'll stay with them." In the exam room, Claire seemed even smaller and more fragile against the white hospital sheets. Tubes and monitors surrounded her, emitting a low hum of electronic beeps. Her eyes were half closed, but they opened when Jack approached. "The girls..." Her voice was barely a whisper. "They're safe," Jack assured her, holding her wrinkled hand. "They're right outside." Claire gave his fingers a weak squeeze. "Don't let them take them." "Miss Claire, I need to understand. Who are they? Where did they come from?" Claire's eyes filled with tears. My angels from the street." Her voice began to falter. "I found abandoned. So little." Jack leaned in closer, trying to catch her every word. "When? Where?" "Behind the market. Crying. So cold." Claire blinked slowly, as if each word cost tremendous energy. "Couldn't let them die." A monitor began beeping more rapidly, and Claire clutched Jack's hand with surprising strength. "Promise. Protect." "I promise," Jack said firmly. "But I need to know more. Why were you hiding?" "Danger," Claire muttered, her eyes beginning to close. Mustn't find..." A nurse hurried in, checking the monitors. "I'm sorry, sir, but I need you to leave. She must rest." In the corridor, Jack found Sophie and Emma exactly as he'd left them, but now holding cups of hot chocolate someone had kindly provided. Dr. Santos sat between them, attempting unsuccessfully to start a conversation. "Mr. Thompson," she said, getting to her feet, "we need to discuss the next steps. With no documentation or identified legal guardian, the girls will need to be placed..." "No." Jack's voice came out more forcefully than he intended. "They're staying with me." The social worker adjusted her glasses. "Mr. Thompson, I understand your concern, but there are procedures..." "I'm Jack Thompson of Thompson Technologies," he interrupted, hating to rely on his name and status, but knowing he had to. "I have resources, influence, and plenty of attorneys who will ensure these children's safety while we figure out exactly what's going on." As if to reinforce his point, Sophie and Emma stood and walked toward him, one on each side. Something in the way they moved, the absolute trust with which they approached, made Dr. Santos pause. "I'll need guarantees," she finally said. "Documentation, evaluations. You'll have them all on your desk first thing tomorrow," Jack promised. "But for tonight, they stay with me." As the social worker left, Jack felt 2 small hands slide into his own. Looking down, he met two pairs of blue eyes that gazed up at him with trust and expectation. "Shall we go home?" Sophie asked quietly. Home. The word echoed in Jack's mind, bearing meanings and promises he'd never considered before. His penthouse, once so cold and impersonal, would need some urgent changes. "Yes," he replied. "Let's go home." But as he led the girls down the hospital hallway, Claire's words replayed in his head. Who was searching for them? What danger still loomed? And most important, what had happened that made two small children vanish from the world? Jack squeezed the little hands holding his, feeling the weight of the promise he'd made. Whatever mystery lay behind this, he was determined to protect these children, even if it meant confronting his own demons in the process. The hospital room was silent, except for the steady beep of the monitors. Jack had managed to bring the twins back for a visit, after convincing the medical staff of how crucial this moment was. Sophie and Emma sat carefully on the edge of Claire's bed, their small hands clasped around hers. Claire, more lucid now after 2 days of treatment, glanced at Jack, who stood near the door. "I think you deserve to know the truth," she said, her voice hoarse yet steady. "About how I found my angels." Jack pulled up a chair by the bed, sensing he was about to hear the story that had intrigued him so. The twins snuggled closer to Claire, as if they already knew the tale but still needed to hear it. "I was a teacher," Claire began, a fleeting smile crossing her face. "For 40 years, I taught children to read and write, to dream and believe. I had a comfortable life, a husband I loved, a home of my own. But life has its own plans." She paused, eyes drifting to the hospital window. "Pierre, my husband, got sick. Cancer. We spent everything on his treatment, sold the house, used up all our savings. But in the end," her voice wavered slightly, "in the end, I was alone. Broke, homeless, left with nothing but memories." Sophie gently squeezed Claire's hand, a gesture of comfort that brought tears to Jack's eyes. "Living on the streets is not easy," Claire continued. "It's not just about hunger or cold. It's about invisibility. People walk by as if you don't exist. After a while, you start to believe it." She adjusted the blanket on her lap, a small smile forming. "I soon learned where it was safe to sleep, who might offer food, which times were best to look for recyclables. It wasn't a life I chose, but I clung to my dignity. And then," her voice grew softer, "on a particularly cold night in January, I heard crying. Behind a closed supermarket, I found these two precious little ones." She smiled at the twins. "So tiny, wrapped in a thin blanket, with nothing but a crumpled envelope beside them." Jack leaned forward, utterly absorbed. "What did the envelope say?" "It was a desperate plea," Claire replied. "Someone begging me to care for them, saying they were in danger. Only their names were there, Sophie and Emma." The girls shifted restlessly on the bed, as they always did when they felt the center of attention. "Many would call it crazy," Claire went on, "a homeless woman taking responsibility for 2 babies. But that night, looking into their faces, I realized I had no choice. My years as a teacher taught me to recognize when a child needs protection." "How did you manage?" Jack asked, admiration seeping into his voice. Claire smiled again. "With love and a bit of luck. I found that abandoned house a few weeks later. It wasn't much, but it offered shelter. I collected more recyclables, and some people helped when they saw the babies. I never accepted more than we needed, and I never stuck around long enough to answer questions." Her hands brushed the twins' hair softly. "I turned one of the rooms into our home. I told them stories in both French and English, like I used to do for my students. I taught them to read and write as soon as they could speak. I tried to give them all the love and education I could, even under such dire circumstances." "Why didn't you ask for help?" Jack pressed gently. "There are institutions." "The note," Claire cut in, her eyes growing alert. "It warned of danger. I didn't know from what or who, but the despair in those words felt real. In institutions, there'd be records, questions, investigations, and if the people they were hiding from ever found them." Jack saw the twins inch even closer, as if they still sought safety with her. "So I kept our secret," Claire said. Every time I heard a police siren or saw someone suspiciously close to our hiding place, I'd tremble. I knew it wasn't legal to raise children without documents, without formal schooling, without doctors, but the alternative. She shuddered. You saved them, Jack said gently. Claire shook her head. They saved me. They gave me purpose when I had nothing left. Every smile, every new word they learned, every hug. I fought for them, searching for food, keeping us warm and safe. Silent tears now streamed down Claire's face. I know it wasn't the life they deserved. They should have had a real home, new toys, friends, a normal life. But I gave them all the love I had. Sophie and Emma, simultaneously, hugged Claire carefully. You're our grandma, Sophie said firmly. The best grandma in the world, Emma added. Jack felt tears blur his own vision. Claire's story was extraordinary. A woman who had lost everything, but still found the strength to care for and protect two abandoned children. Now, Claire said, gazing directly at Jack, I need to know if I made the right choice in trusting you, because they're all I have, all that matters. You made the right choice, Jack answered resolutely. I'll protect them, and I'll find out who is after them. I promise. Claire nodded slowly, allowing herself finally to relax. Then maybe, she murmured, after all these years, my girls can finally have the life they deserve. The sun streamed through the hospital window that afternoon, bathing the room in a golden glow. Jack looked at the trio on the bed, the elderly woman and the two little girls she had protected so fiercely, and silently promised them all he would uncover the truth behind this mystery, no matter the cost. Let's have an adventure today, Claire exclaimed, her voice carrying a special excitement she saved for such moments. It was a cold, rainy morning, the kind that made the house even damper and gloomier, but Claire knew exactly how to turn adversity into fun. Sophie and Emma, then about 3 years old, watched in fascination as she draped old sheets across makeshift ropes in the room they'd turned into their home. Today, she declared with a playful flourish, we're going camping in the enchanted forest. The room, which others might see as desolate with peeling wallpaper and windows patched with cardboard, came alive through Claire's imagination. Water stains on the walls turned into maps of hidden treasure. Shadows cast by the sheets became magical trees, and the worn-out floor became a secret path through uncharted lands. But first, Claire smiled, taking out the small alcohol-burning stove she used so carefully, we need our adventurer's breakfast. Using precise movements, she heated water in a dented but meticulously clean pot. The oatmeal she prepared was simple, yet her stories transformed it into magic potion for strength and courage. The twins sat on improvised stools, wooden crates covered with scraps of cloth. Their bright blue eyes followed every move of the grandmother figure, who turned cooking into a magical performance. Did you know, Claire said as she stirred the oatmeal, that in the enchanted forest each animal has a special talent? She mimicked various voices for each imaginary character. The wise squirrel guarding all the forest's secrets, the singing bird delivering important messages, the speedy rabbit guiding lost travelers. The girls giggled and joined in the story, adding their own characters and adventures. This was Claire's method of teaching them, through stories combining fantasy with valuable lessons. Numbers were taught by counting magic coins, bottle caps she collected. Letters were learned by drawing in the dust of the windows. After breakfast came school. Claire had improvised a chalkboard by painting a board with special paint donated by a kind painter. The chalk pieces were guarded like treasures. Each bit was used until it was gone. Today we're learning about the stars, she announced, drawing constellations on the homemade board. Her voice took on the instructive tone from her teaching days, yet she never lost the magical element that so captivated her little students. Afternoons were devoted to hands-on activities. Claire taught the girls to sew with blunt needles and scraps of fabric. Each stitch is a wish, she'd say, and when we finish sewing, all the wishes come together to create magic. She invented educational games with discarded materials, dominoes from pieces of wood, puzzles made from pictures cut out of old magazines, building blocks using small boxes filled with sand for weight. Every toy was a lesson in resourcefulness and creativity. On colder days, Claire had special tricks to keep them warm. She'd heat stones on the tiny stove and wrap them in cloth, turning them into little pockets of warmth she tucked under the blankets. "They're magic stones," she'd explain, "heated by dragons in the mountains. Nighttime was the most special hour, story time." Claire would light a small oil lamp, carefully saving what little fuel she had, and use her hands to cast shadows on the wall, bringing her stories to life. Some were traditional tales she recalled from her teaching years, others she invented on the spot, always with a message of hope and courage. "Once upon a time, there were two magical princesses," she often began, making the girls smile as they recognized themselves, who lived in an enchanted castle. It looked old and abandoned to passers-by, but inside it was full of love and magic. On stormy days, when thunder shook the old house, Claire turned fear into adventure. "That's just the giants bowling in the clouds," she'd say, hugging the girls. Then she'd organize a pajama party under the draped sheets, telling stories until they fell asleep. Food was always a challenge. Claire developed a careful network: bakers who saved day-old bread, a vendor who set aside bruised but edible fruit, the grocery store owner who sometimes forgot a few cans near the trash. She never asked outright, preserving both her dignity and the secret of the twins. Resourcefulness turned every meal into a special experience. Stale bread became magical toast when warmed with a dash of cinnamon. Vegetable soup turned into power potion, each ingredient having a special ability. Even water had a story. "It comes from an enchanted spring in the mountains," she'd say, after boiling it carefully. The girls learned early on the importance of being silent and discreet. Claire made it a game. "We're secret spies," she'd whisper, teaching them to move noiselessly, to observe without being seen. It was her way of keeping them safe while preserving their innocence. On special days, when she managed to gather a few extra coins, Claire brought little surprises: a new colored pencil, a ribbon for their hair, a small chocolate bar to share. These simple gifts were celebrated like treasures, each with its own magical backstory. The abandoned house, with all its flaws and limitations, was their sanctuary. Claire maintained a strict vigilance, always alert to strange voices or suspicious movements, any hint of danger. But within those battered walls, she managed to create a world of magic and love, where two little girls could grow up safely, even if hidden. "We're a special family," Claire would say, hugging the twins before bedtime. "Others may not understand our magic, but it's here in the love we share." In doing so, day by day, Claire turned a situation of extreme hardship into a living fairy tale, proving that love and imagination can spark light in the unlikeliest places. Her tireless dedication and boundless creativity made the old house not just a hiding spot, but a genuine home where two little girls could grow, surrounded by love, learning, and magic. Ricardo Mendez's office was on the 10th floor of a modest commercial building downtown. Jack watched the private investigator leaf through the documents he'd brought, his notes on the case, photos of the twins, Claire's hospital statement, everything meticulously organized in a folder. "Cases involving children are always the toughest," said Ricardo, adjusting his thin-rimmed glasses as he examined the photographs. "Especially when there are no official records to start with." Jack shifted in the worn leather chair. It had been a week since he found the girls, and each day without answers heightened his anxiety. "I have unlimited resources for this investigation," he stated. "I just need the truth about them." Ricardo lifted his eyes from the documents, his world-weary face reflecting concern. "Mr. Thompson, sometimes all the money in the world can't solve a mystery, but we'll do our best. Tell me everything again, every detail you remember." For an hour, Jack recounted the entire story, from discovering the twins on the roadside, to the abandoned house, to Claire's disjointed words about danger and protection. Ricardo jotted down occasional notes in a dog-eared notebook, frowning more as Jack talked. "The note," Ricardo murmured. "Claire mentioned a note left with the babies. We have to find it." "I've already searched the abandoned house," Jack responded. "Found nothing but a few basic belongings, old clothes, improvised toys, kitchenware. A woman who dedicated 4 years to protecting these girls wouldn't throw away the only clue about their origins." Ricardo stood, walking to the window. "We'll start with that. We need to find the note." In the days that followed, the investigation branched off in many directions, all of which led to dead ends. Ricardo tapped into his network, contacts in hospitals, public registries, shelters. Jack received daily updates, each more disappointing than the last. No record of twins born in the region that matched their description, Ricardo reported during one meeting. I've checked every hospital within a 125-mile radius. Nothing. What about Claire? Jack asked. Any progress on her past? Ricardo opened another folder. Claire Dupont, 68. She was a teacher for 40 years at Saint Marie Academy. Well respected, beloved by her students. Lost everything caring for her ailing husband. After that, he made a vague gesture. She disappeared from the system, until now. They returned to the abandoned house multiple times, meticulously searching for any clues. Every room was inspected, every loose floorboard checked, every conceivable hiding place investigated. But the note Claire mentioned seemed to have vanished. It's as if these girls appeared out of thin air, Ricardo said, frustration lacing his voice. No birth records, no missing child reports that match, no leads on their parents. Jack ran a hand over his face, exhausted. Back at his penthouse, Sophie and Emma were adapting surprisingly well, breathing life and cheer into what was once a sterile environment, but the lack of answers gnawed at him. "You're certain you've checked every hospital?" he asked for the 10th time. "All of them." Ricardo consulted his notes. "All including private clinics and midwife-led birth centers. No record of twins from that time period who match their features." "How is that possible?" Jack muttered, mostly to himself. "Two children can't just appear out of nowhere." The detective shut his notebook with a sigh. "Sometimes the most baffling mysteries leave no trace. Whoever left these girls did a thorough job erasing every bit of evidence." Driving home that night, Jack couldn't stop thinking about the unanswered questions. Who were the twins' parents? Why had they abandoned them? And more importantly, what was the danger Claire feared? Entering his penthouse, he found Sophie and Emma drawing in the living room. They had sketched a portrait of him, Claire, and themselves, an improvised yet genuine family. "Uncle Jack!" they cried in unison, running to hug him as they did every evening. Later, after tucking them into bed, Jack received a text from Ricardo. Another dead end. No sign of children matching them in local school records either. As if someone deliberately erased all traces. Jack gazed at the sleeping twins, their faces serene, giving no hint of the mystery around them. Meanwhile, Claire was slowly recovering in the hospital, her warnings of danger echoing in his mind. The frustration of the investigation was mounting. Each lead only birthed more questions. It felt like chasing shadows. The closer they got, the more the mystery receded. Sitting in his private study, Jack examined once again the scant evidence they had. Photos of the girls, inconclusive reports, notes leading nowhere. The truth of Sophie and Emma seemed to be shielded by an impenetrable veil of secrets. Yet as he studied a recent picture of the twins smiling, Jack realized that perhaps some truths were more important than others. Their origins were a puzzle, yes, but Claire's love for them over 4 years and his own growing affection were real and tangible. Maybe, he thought, some mysteries don't need to be solved. Maybe what matters most is protecting their present and future. With that in mind, Jack put the investigation documents away. The twins' story would remain a mystery for now, but as long as they were safe and loved, perhaps that was enough. The hospital's small garden looked just right for serious conversations that crisp autumn afternoon, with soft sunlight filtering through golden leaves. Claire, seated in a wheelchair, watched Sophie and Emma playing by a little fountain. 2 weeks of recovery had done wonders. Her cheeks were rosier, her gaze clearer. Jack sat on a bench next to her, noticing how her eyes never left the girls even as they spoke. "You know," Claire began, her voice stronger these days, "before them, I felt I had lost all purpose. When Pierre died, when I lost everything, I thought my life was over." Jack stayed quiet, letting her continue. The twins laughed as they tried to catch falling leaves, their new dresses, Jack's gift, fluttering in the breeze. "Living on the streets is lonely," Claire said. "It's not just hunger or cold. It's the feeling of being invisible. People walk past you as if you don't exist. After a while, you start believing that. She adjusted the shawl over her shoulders, a gift from the nurses who'd grown fond of her. I used to sit on a park bench, watching kids play with their parents, remembering my own years as a teacher, how it felt to make a difference. And then you found them, Jack said quietly. Claire smiled, tears shimmering in her eyes. They found me, Jack. That night when I heard their cries, and you know what's ironic? It was the first time in 2 years that someone needed me. Sophie waved from the fountain, and Claire instantly waved back. The note spoke of danger, but I think even without it, I'd have taken them in. There was something in their eyes, so purely trusting. Did you think about asking for help? Jack asked gently. Authorities, social services. Claire shook her head emphatically. The words in that note were not just a warning, but a desperate plea. They're in danger. Who leaves 2 babies out in the cold unless the danger of keeping them is even greater? Jack processed her explanation, watching the twins now spinning in circles around each other in a sort of improvised dance. Those first months, Claire continued, I barely slept. Every siren, every stranger passing too close to our hideout. I turned fear into caution, caution into routine. I learned a new kind of invisibility, no longer the homeless woman people ignored, but a guardian protecting a priceless secret. Her voice trembled. I know what I did wasn't legal, raising 2 children off the record, no formal school, no medical care. But every one of their smiles, each new word, every bedtime hug, I knew it was right. You gave them love, Jack said, and protection, a family. Claire turned to him, her eyes unexpectedly intense. You don't understand, Jack. They gave me so much more. They gave me a reason to live on, to fight. Every cent I earned was for them. Every story I made up, every little trick to keep that house somewhat livable. It wasn't just about protecting them. It was about giving them a childhood, even under the worst circumstances. Emma ran over at that moment, her golden hair glinting in the sunlight. Grandma Claire, look what I found. She held out a pigeon feather, glimmering in the light. Claire took the feather with mock solemnity, as though it were a priceless gem. Ah, my little one, that's magic. Do you know what they say about pigeon feathers found in hospital gardens? Emma shook her head, wide-eyed. Sophie also came closer, equally intrigued. They say they bring luck and healing, Claire improvised, her tone making a simple story sound wondrous, especially when found by brave little princesses. The girls beamed, hurrying back to their game. Jack watched them with a tightness in his chest. See, Claire said softly, that's how we survived, turning every small thing into magic, every hardship into an adventure. I couldn't give them new toys or clothes, but I could give them imagination, stories, love. She paused, her gaze distant. Sometimes, on the worst nights, when the cold was too fierce or food was too scarce, I wondered if I was being selfish, if I should have turned them in to the authorities, given them a shot at a normal life. But, Jack prompted. But then I'd remember the note, the desperation in those words, and I'd look at them, sleeping curled up, trusting me completely. How could I betray that trust? Jack placed a hand over hers, feeling the calluses formed by years of struggle. You're an extraordinary person, Claire laughed gently. No, Jack, I'm just someone who found purpose when she needed it most. These girls, they saved me every bit as much as I saved them. The sun was getting low, painting the sky in pink and orange shades. The girls returned to them, automatically positioning themselves on either side of Claire's wheelchair. Jack, Claire began, her voice serious, you have to understand whatever danger threatened them may still be out there. Promise you'll protect them, no matter what. Looking at that unusual family, the elderly woman who'd sacrificed all for love, and the 2 girls who'd given her life meaning, Jack felt the weight of that promise. With my life, he replied, and he knew every word was true. It was a quiet afternoon in the hospital when she appeared, a young woman, no older than 30, wearing a simple cleaning uniform. Her blonde hair was pinned in a discreet bun, and her eyes, an astonishing shade of blue, seemed burdened with the weight of the world. Claire was alone in her room. The twins were out for ice cream with Jack, their new tradition. The woman entered silently, pushing a cleaning cart. "Good afternoon," she said softly, her voice trembling slightly. "I came to clean the room." Claire, flipping through a magazine, lifted her gaze, and time seemed to freeze. For a moment, neither of them moved. The only sounds were the steady beeping of the monitors and the ticking clock on the wall. "I know you," Claire finally whispered, her voice barely audible. The woman, her name tag read Emily Martin, clutched the rag in her hands. "No, ma'am. You must be mixing me up with someone else." But Claire kept staring, memories of years spent on silent alert flooding her mind. The woman she sometimes saw watching from a distance, the figure disappearing into the shadows whenever she noticed she was being observed. "You've always been around," Claire continued, voice growing stronger. "At the market, in the square, near the house. You thought I didn't notice?" Emily shut the door quietly, her hands shaking, tears forming in her eyes so much like Sophie's and Emma's that denying the connection was impossible. "How are they?" Emily asked, voice thick with emotion. "You already know how they are," Claire replied, without accusation in her tone, only deep understanding. "You've been watching all these years." Emily suppressed a sob, collapsing into the chair next to the bed. "I couldn't stay away, but I also couldn't get close." "Because of the danger in the note?" Claire asked gently. Emily nodded, wiping her tears with the back of her hand. "I work as a cleaner at the hospital. When I heard you were here, I had to see how you were, to say thank you, thank me, for doing what I couldn't," Emily said, voice breaking. "Giving them love, protection, a home, even if it wasn't perfect." Claire extended her wrinkled hand, and Emily took it as if it were a lifeline. "Why don't you tell me the whole story now?" she suggested softly. Emily opened her mouth to reply, but then cheerful voices approached the room. Jack and the twins were coming back. Panicked, Emily stood up abruptly. I'm not ready," she mumbled, heading for the door. "Emily," Claire called firmly, "they deserve to know, and you deserve to meet them." The door opened, and Sophie and Emma came bounding in, their faces bright with smiles and smeared with chocolate ice cream. They came to a halt upon seeing the stranger, and for a moment it felt as though time froze again. Emily stared at her daughters with an intensity that made Claire's heart ache. The twins, in turn, displayed that uncanny intuition of theirs. Something in their expressions changed, as if they recognized something familiar in the unknown woman. Jack, standing at the door, sensed the tension. "I'm sorry, we didn't realize you had visitors. I was just leaving," Emily blurted, voice trembling. "I only came to clean." She brushed past Jack and the girls, but not before Sophie asked in her small, clear voice, "Why are you crying?" Emily froze, her body shaking. She turned slowly, meeting two sets of blue eyes identical to hers. Emily," Claire said again, gently but firmly. "Stay." Jack, realizing something big was happening, closed the door quietly. The twins, in their childlike wisdom, edged closer to Emily, though cautiously. "Your eyes look like ours," Emma said, cocking her head. Emily sank to her knees, now at their level, hands trembling at her sides as if she wanted to touch them but didn't dare. "Yes," she whispered, "they are like yours." "Do you know us?" Sophie asked, taking one more step forward. Emily glanced at Claire, who gave her an encouraging nod, then at Jack, who watched with cautious protectiveness. "Yes," she finally said, tears spilling freely now. "I've known you forever." "How?" Emma asked. Emily took a deep breath, tears dripping from her chin. Because I am your mother." Silence fell like a curtain. The twins looked at Claire, who offered a gentle smile, then at Jack, who looked as stunned as they were, and finally back at Emily. "Why didn't you ever come see us?" Sophie asked, voice filled with curiosity rather than accusation. "Because," Emily swallowed hard, "because I wanted to keep you safe, and the only way I knew how was leaving you with someone who could protect you better than I could." "Grandma Claire," Emma said, understanding dawning on her face. "Yes," Emily replied, sobbing. "Your Grandma Claire is the bravest, kindest person I've ever known." Claire wiped tears of her own as she watched them. But you never stopped caring for them, did you? You were always around, making sure they were okay. Emily nodded. I just couldn't stay completely away. I had to know if they were safe, happy, even if I couldn't be part of their lives. Sophie and Emma exchanged that twin look. Then, to everyone's surprise, both stepped forward and hugged Emily. Emily let out a mix of sob and laugh, holding her daughters after 4 long years. Forgive me, she murmured. Forgive me for not being strong enough to stay. You were strong enough to keep them safe, Claire said softly. And maybe now, we can all be strong together. Jack, who had quietly observed until then, spoke up. Emily, I think we have a lot to talk about. Emily nodded, still cradling the twins. Yes, she said. You need to know the whole truth about the danger, about why I had to let them go into everything. Jack Thompson's office, normally reserved for business deals and corporate decisions, had become the setting for a far more personal, critical conversation. The large windows offered a sweeping view of the city, glowing in the afternoon sun, while inside, tension and emotion weighed heavy in the air. Emily Martin sat in one of the leather armchairs, hands clasped in her lap. Claire, freshly discharged from the hospital, occupied another chair, looking stronger each day. Jack stood leaning against his desk, while the twins sat on the floor in a corner, seemingly absorbed in drawing but with ears attuned to every word. I think it's time, Jack said gently. We finally understand what happened. Emily took a shaky breath, her eyes, so like the girls', flicking nervously between the others. Where should I begin? From the start, Claire suggested kindly. Why did you have to leave them that night? Emily closed her eyes, as if mustering courage. I worked as an administrative assistant. It was my first job at a major firm, a real chance after years of struggle. She paused, her hands trembling. The father of the girls held a position of power. He found out, she continued, voice trembling, around my 5th month, when I couldn't hide the pregnancy anymore. He was furious, said I'd ruined everything, that I threatened his status, his future. In the corner, Sophie and Emma paused in their drawing, pencils hovering mid-air. He threatened me, Emily went on, hands shaking visibly. Said if I didn't fix the problem, and he would, that he had enough power to ensure I'd never see my children, that no one would believe me against him. I knew he was capable of it. Jack clenched his fists unconsciously, while Claire covered her mouth in shock. I ran away that night, Emily said through tears. Resigned by email and vanished. Spent the rest of my pregnancy hiding, changing towns, but when the girls were born, I knew he'd never stop looking. He had resources, connections. I couldn't risk it. So you couldn't keep them with you, Claire concluded softly. Emily shook her head, the guilt still visible in her eyes. So I watched and waited for someone who could protect them better than I could. That's when I found you, Claire. I saw how you treated other children, even while living on the streets. There was a strength and kindness in you that gave me hope. But you never truly left, Jack observed. I couldn't, Emily agreed, glancing at the twins. I found odd jobs nearby, always moving around so as not to leave traces, but never going too far. Sometimes I spent hours just watching from a distance, seeing how Claire turned that old house into a loving home. Sophie rose suddenly, walking toward Emily with determined steps. Emma followed, as always. Did you cry when you saw us? Sophie asked. Emily looked surprised by the question. Yes, my love, every time. I knew, Sophie said simply. Sometimes I felt someone crying, even when I couldn't see anyone. Emma took Emily's hand, looking at it intently. Were you really scared? Emily pulled Emma into a tight hug, extending her other arm to Sophie. Yes, sweetheart. But the fear of losing you was bigger than being afraid of him. What do you want now? Jack asked, his voice laced with resolve. Emily, what are you looking for? Emily turned her gaze to the twins, then to Claire, finally resting on Jack. I want to be part of their lives if you'll let me. Not to replace the love Claire gave them, or interfere in what you're building, Jack. I just want the chance to love them openly. Even with the risk, Claire asked quietly. I can't keep living in the shadows, Emily replied. These last few weeks, seeing how safe they are with all of you, Maybe together we can protect them better than I ever could alone." Claire smiled through tears. "There's no such thing as too much love for a child. They can have two mothers and an uncle, can't they?" The twins beamed, that identical smile lighting their faces. "And a grandma," Emma added. "But we need to be careful," Jack interjected protectively. "Set up security measures. Be prepared." "We can all live together," Sophie piped up, brimming with excitement. The adults exchanged glances, considering the child's suggestion from a new angle. "My penthouse is highly secure," Jack began. "Claire's already moving in." "Emily, I need some distance," Emily said softly, "for safety, but I can be around. Visit." "Can we have two homes?" Emma asked. "One with Uncle Jack and Grandma Claire, and another to visit Mommy Emily?" Once more, the girls' suggestions turned out to be surprisingly logical. It was a way for Emily to maintain independence and safety while forging a relationship with her daughters. "I can arrange a secure apartment," Jack offered, "with all the protection you need." Emily nodded, tears of gratitude welling up again. "You'd do that after everything." "We're a family now," Claire said firmly. "Maybe not in the conventional sense, but family's about more than conventions." The twins, still in Emily's arms, smiled as if the sun had appeared in the office. Jack watched them, feeling a growing determination. Whoever Emily's ex-boss was, whatever power he held, he'd have to get through all of them now. "So it's decided," Jack said. "We'll make it work, with every precaution we can." "A family with secret superpowers," Sophie squealed, making everyone laugh. "Well," Jack grinned, despite the gravity of the situation, "that calls for a celebration. How about dinner, all of us?" The twins jumped with excitement. Emily laughed through tears, and Claire nodded approvingly. It was a new beginning for them all, not free from fear or danger, but bolstered by love and determination to stand together no matter what. And as the sun set over the city, bathing the skyline in shades of pink and gold, that improbable family began to plan their future. A future grounded in love, courage, and a readiness to face any challenge hand in hand. Jack's penthouse had undergone a remarkable transformation in recent weeks. Rooms once stark and minimalist now revealed clear signs of the twins' presence, colorful drawings on the refrigerator, toys neatly stored in chic baskets, and tiny shoes lined up near the door. It was Sunday afternoon and Emily had come to visit. Claire was in the kitchen making hot chocolate, while Sophie and Emma proudly showed off their newly decorated bedroom to their mother. Jack stood in the doorway, smiling at how much his life had changed in such a short time. Emily stopped abruptly in the hallway, where a wall displayed a series of family photographs in frames. Jack saw her face go pale. "Emily," he called, noticing her sudden shift. "Everything all right?" But Emily seemed transfixed by a particular photo, one of Jack with his older brother, Thomas, on a fishing trip 2 years prior. Her hand trembled as she pointed. "Do you know him?" asked Jack, a strange feeling churning in his stomach. "Thomas," Emily whispered, the name escaping her lips like a frightened sigh. "Thomas Thompson." The world froze for an instant. Jack felt as if the ground was lurching beneath him. He remembered noticing certain resemblances in the twins, the mysterious familiarity he'd felt since the first moment he saw them. "No," he breathed, his voice hoarse. "It can't be." "Jack?" Claire emerged from the kitchen carrying a tray of steaming mugs. "What's happening?" Emily couldn't tear her eyes from the photo, tears rolling down her face. "He's your brother." The mugs rattled on the tray as Claire hurriedly set it on a nearby table. Sophie and Emma, sensing the tension, appeared at the bedroom door with worried looks. "Thomas," Emily continued, voice trembling, "was the senior executive where I worked. When he learned about my pregnancy..." She paused, swallowed. "He threatened me." Jack staggered until he leaned against the wall, his legs too weak to stand. "The girls, they're my nieces." Silence fell like a heavy cloak. Claire raised her hands to her mouth, while the twins, not fully grasping the gravity of it, moved closer to Emily instinctively. "He threatened me," Emily repeated more forcefully, tears running freely now. "Said he'd ruin my career, use all his power and influence to take my babies the moment they were born. That no one would believe me against him. Jack closed his eyes. It was typical of Thomas. He'd always been the more ambitious, more ruthless brother. While Jack built his own empire from scratch, Thomas climbed the corporate ladder using any means possible. "That's why you ran," Claire said, understanding at last. "Why you were so afraid." Emily nodded, pulling Sophie and Emma closer. "He had so much power, so many connections. I knew he could do exactly what he threatened. I'd seen him destroy others who crossed him." "Uncle Jack?" Sophie asked, her voice small but steady. "Are you mad at Mommy?" The innocent question cut straight to Jack's heart. He looked at the twins, his nieces, tracing their features, noting not only the resemblance to Thomas but also their sweetness and innocence, traits Thomas had long ago lost in his quest for power. "No, sweetheart," he said gently. "I'm not mad at your mom. She was very brave to protect you." "We should confirm," Claire said pragmatically. "A DNA test." "Yes," Jack agreed instantly. "I'll arrange it immediately." In the following days, as they waited for the results, tension enveloped the penthouse. Jack spent hours in his office, poring over old photographs, now unable to unsee the family traits the twins displayed. The same eye shape as his mother, the same grin as his father. How had he not realized sooner? When the envelope arrived with the results, no one was surprised by the confirmation. A 99.9% likelihood of relatedness. The twins were indeed Thomas Thompson's daughters. "What do we do now?" Emily asked, hands trembling as she held the lab report. "If he finds out—" "He won't lay a finger on you," Jack declared, his determination a tangible force. "I'm as powerful as my brother now, and unlike him, I use my influence to protect, not to destroy." Claire, seated between the twins, nodded. "We're a family, all of us. Families protect each other." "But he's our dad," Emma inquired, curiosity plain in her voice. It was Emily who replied, kneeling before them. "Yes, darling. But sometimes being a father is more than sharing DNA. It's about love, protection, caring. Like Grandma Claire, who shielded you when you had nothing, and Uncle Jack, who's been a dad to you now." Jack felt tears stinging his eyes. In a matter of weeks, his entire life had been turned upside down. He had discovered not only that he was an uncle, but that his own brother was capable of threatening a pregnant woman and jeopardizing the safety of his own children. "Thomas doesn't need to know," he said finally. "Not yet. Not until we're sure we can keep you safe." Emily released a shaky sigh, while the twins ran to hug Jack, uncle, protector, father figure, in every way that mattered. "I think," said Claire with a gentle smile, "our little family miracle just got even more special." A month had passed since that shattering revelation. Jack's penthouse, once a symbol of his solitary lifestyle, now hummed with a different energy. Mornings, formerly punctuated only by the coffee maker and financial news, were now a chorus of giggles, chatter, and the aroma of pancakes. On this particular morning, Jack watched from the kitchen door as Claire taught the twins to make animal-shaped pancakes. Emily, who'd spent the night in the guest room after a movie marathon, was helping Sophie pour the batter into the pan. "Look, Uncle Jack!" Emma exclaimed, proudly showing off a pancake that resembled a puffy cloud more than a bunny. "It's a rabbit," Jack smiled, realizing how Uncle had shifted from a shocking fact to a cherished title. "That's the best rabbit pancake I've ever seen," he replied, delighting her. The apartment's transformation mirrored changes in their lives. Jack's office boasted a wall covered with the girls' drawings. The austere library now had a colorful shelf of children's books, and the once empty guest room was now an enchanted space, with pastel walls and furniture carefully chosen by everyone. Emily had resisted Jack's financial help at first, but eventually accepted that it was his right and responsibility as the twins' uncle. He arranged a secure apartment for her in the same building, just a few floors below, so she could be close yet keep her own space. "You know," Claire said later that day, watching the twins play in the living room, "it's amazing how fate works. 4 months ago, we were all strangers." Jack nodded thoughtfully. "Sometimes I wonder how I didn't see it before. Now the similarities with Thomas are obvious. But they take after you in so many ways," Emily interjected gently, joining them. "Your kindness, your empathy, that didn't come from their father." It was true. The more time Jack spent with his nieces, the more he recognized in them the best traits of his family, the determination of his grandmother, his grandfather's creativity, the loyalty Jack himself held dear. Thomas might have contributed DNA, but the girls' characters were shaped by love, not ambition. They had settled into a routine of sorts, juggling new responsibilities. Mornings usually began at Jack's place, with Claire cooking breakfast while Emily, who came up early from her apartment, helped the twins get ready for the private school they now attended, a carefully chosen institution for its discretion and security. Jack restructured his work schedule, delegating more tasks so he could be a stable figure for the twins. He went to parent-teacher meetings, monitored homework, never missed a show or event. To them, he became a constant, reliable presence, the uncle who was always there. "I remember the first time I saw them," he mused one evening, as the adults shared a glass of wine after the girls were asleep. "On that dusty road, they looked so small and scared. I never imagined they'd become the most important part of my life." Claire smiled, her lined face looking softer without the weight of secrecy. "Love works miracles, Jack. It turns strangers into family." Emily, who still wrestled with guilt over the past, discreetly wiped away a tear. "You gave me more than forgiveness. You gave me a real family." Of course, challenges remained. The girls still had questions about the father they'd never met. Fear of Thomas discovering the truth loomed, but they faced all of it together, each offering the unique strengths that bonded them as a family. Jack had hired discreet security personnel to keep an eye on Thomas from afar, ensuring he remained oblivious to the truth. Emily was slowly regaining professional confidence, taking a position at a smaller company with flexible hours. Claire, now comfortably ensconced in Jack's penthouse, was the emotional anchor, guiding everyone with her wisdom and unconditional love. The twins thrived on the love and safety that surrounded them. Sophie, always the more introspective, showed a knack for art, her paintings slowly taking over more space in both apartments. Emma developed a passion for storytelling, weaving elaborate tales mixing past hardships with new adventures. "Do you think," Sophie asked one night as the family watched the sunset from the balcony, "that one day we'll meet our dad?" Tension arose at her question. Jack knelt before his niece, choosing his words carefully. "One day, when it's safe, we'll handle it together. As a family. But we already have a whole family," Emma declared with a child's simple wisdom. "We have Uncle Jack, who's like a dad, Grandma Claire, who saved us, and Mommy Emily, who always loved us, even from far away." The little girl's words brought tears to the adults. It was true. They had built something special, something that defied traditional labels but was no less real or loving. Jack's penthouse had become the center of this unusual family. The once echoing walls now told stories of shared experiences, movie nights in the living room, homework at the kitchen table, bedtime stories in the girls' bedroom. One wall in particular showcased a family gallery. It began with old photos of Jack and Thomas as boys, included a faded picture of Claire from her teaching days, news clippings of Emily's academic achievements, and ended with dozens of recent snapshots, Sophie and Emma on their first day of school, makeshift birthday celebrations, everyday moments capturing their shared joy. "It's amazing," Jack remarked after a particularly joyous dinner, "how life can change so completely in so little time." Claire, knitting on the sofa while the girls played on the rug, smiled. "Life always surprises us, Jack. The trick is staying open to love, however it arrives." Emily, packing the twins' school things for the next day, added, "And having courage to accept those changes, even when they're scary." That night, after doing his usual security check around the penthouse, Jack paused at the door to the girls' bedroom. Sophie and Emma slept soundly, breathing in tandem as they always did. The soft glow of a nightlight cast gentle shadows, and for a moment, Jack was overwhelmed by gratitude. His world, once measured in business success and bank balances, was now measured in smiles, hugs, and small daily victories. Although the threat of Thomas still lingered, a dark cloud on the horizon, he refused to let fear define their lives. Together, they had built something precious, a family formed not just by blood, but by a series of daily choices to love, protect, and understand one another. Each day brought fresh challenges, yet also new joys, and each moment of connection strengthened their bond. So day by day, this improbable family continued their journey of healing, turning scars into badges of honor, fears into motivation to push forward, and a dark past into the foundation of a bright future built together. Jack's decision wasn't easy. After weeks of deliberation, he finally concluded it was time to confront the past. One Saturday morning, having consulted Emily and Claire, he made the call that would change everything. "Thomas, I need you to come to my penthouse today. It's important. It's about family." Jack's voice was steady, but his heart pounded. "Yes, that's right. I'll text you the address." A few hours later, the doorbell rang. Emily stayed in the twins' room with Sophie and Emma, while Claire remained in the kitchen. The girls were playing in the living room, unaware of the tension in the air. Jack took a deep breath before opening the door. Thomas Thompson, immaculate in his designer suit, entered with the confidence of someone used to commanding any space he walked into. "Jack, I hope this is really important. I cancelled a meeting." His words died on his lips as his eyes fell on the two little girls in the living room. Sophie and Emma froze mid-play, looking curiously at the stranger who shared their blue eyes. "What is this?" Thomas whispered, his usual arrogance draining away. "Who are they?" "They're your daughters," Jack said simply. "Sophie and Emma." Thomas turned ashen. He staggered, reaching out to brace himself against a wall. "No, that's not possible." "It is," came a quiet voice from the hallway. Emily emerged, standing straight, her years of fear replaced by a newly found strength. "They're your daughters, Thomas, the ones you forced me to hide." Thomas looked at Emily as though he'd seen a ghost. "Emily, you. Have a seat," Jack said, indicating the sofa. "We have a lot to talk about." Claire appeared silently, gently ushering the twins toward the bedroom with the promise of a special game. This moment was for the adults. Thomas sank onto the couch, his gaze still fixed on the spot where the girls had disappeared. "All these years, you kept them hidden all these years. You gave me no choice," Emily said, sitting in an armchair opposite him. "Your threats, your anger. What else could I do?" "I was a monster," Thomas whispered, and for the first time in his life, tears trickled down his face. "I was so consumed by ambition, by status. When you told me about the pregnancy, I only cared about how it would damage my career." Jack observed his brother, the always calm, always ruthless Thomas, crumbling under the weight of the truth. "They're wonderful, Thomas. Smart, loving, brave, everything our family always cared about. How did they survive? Where have they been?" Emily shared everything: her escape, finding Claire, the years spent in the abandoned house, and how Jack discovered them. With each word, Thomas seemed to shrink, weighed down by his past actions. "I've changed," he said at last, voice ragged. "In the last few years, I realized how empty my life was. All the power, the money. It's meaningless when you have no one to share it with." "You have a chance now," Jack said quietly. "Not to erase the past, but to do better from here on out." "Do they know?" Thomas asked. "Do they know who I am?" "They know you're their biological father," Emily replied, "but they also know that family is more than blood. They have Claire, who protected them with nothing. They have Jack, who has become the father you couldn't be. And they have me, who can finally love them openly." Thomas got to his feet slowly, walking over to the window. For several minutes, he stayed silent, staring at the city outside. When he turned around, his face was transformed. "Can I meet them?" "Properly." Emily and Jack exchanged a look. It was Emily who answered, "Yes, but it will be on their terms, their pace, and you'll have to prove you deserve to be in their lives." Claire returned with the twins just then, who regarded the tearful man by the window with curiosity. "Sophie, Emma," Emily said gently, "this is Thomas, your biological dad." The girls stepped forward cautiously. Sophie, the more direct one, asked, "Why are you crying?" Thomas knelt, bringing himself to their level. Because I made terrible mistakes and hurt people I shouldn't have. Most of all, your mum, who is one of the bravest people I've ever known. Emma tilted her head, studying him. Are you still mean? The innocent question cut Thomas to the core. No, he replied, voice trembling. Not anymore. Not. And I want the chance to prove it, if you'll let me. The twins exchanged one of their familiar silent looks. Then Sophie said, We have to ask our family. Your family? Thomas repeated. Yes, Emma confirmed. Uncle Jack, who protects us. Grandma Claire, who saved us. And Mommy Emily, who always loved us, even from far away. Thomas looked at the three adults who had built a fortress of love around his daughters. You're more of a family to them than I ever was, he said quietly. But if you'll give me a chance. Family can grow, Claire said wisely, as long as there's genuine love and sincere remorse. That afternoon, something began to shift. Thomas got to know his daughters through stories and drawings, listening to their unique personalities, their likes, their fears, and dreams. With each word and laugh, the man who had once cared only for power discovered a new kind of wealth. I can never make up for the lost years, he said as evening settled, but I promise when from now on to be the father they deserve. It won't be easy, Jack warned. You'll have to prove, day after day, that you've truly changed. And you'll have to accept you're not the only father figure they have, Emily added. Jack earned that title through love and commitment, Thomas nodded, genuine humility showing on his face for the first time. I know I don't deserve it, but I'm willing to do whatever it takes to earn a place in this extraordinary family. Before leaving, Thomas paused to look at his daughters one last time. Sophie and Emma had returned to their play, secure in the love surrounding them. Thank you, he said softly, for not letting my mistakes define their future. When the door closed behind him, a thoughtful silence filled the penthouse. It wasn't the end of the story, but the start of a new chapter, where forgiveness opened the door to healing, and an unconventional family proved that love can soften even the hardest heart. With her characteristic wisdom, Claire summed it up perfectly. Sometimes the greatest act of love is giving someone a chance to be better than they used to be. And so, this extraordinary family took another step forward in their journey of resilience and love, proving that the strongest bonds aren't always the ones you're born with, but the ones you choose to strengthen day after day. Snow fell gently outside the large windows of Jack's penthouse, turning the city into a postcard scene that Christmas Eve. Inside, the space glowed not only from a cozy fireplace, but from the warmth of laughter and conversation filling every corner. The penthouse, which a year ago was a cold, lonely place, now burst with life and holiday decor. A tall, real pine tree stood in one corner of the living room, laden with ornaments that told the family's unique story. From delicate porcelain angels Claire had chosen to handmade crafts Sophie and Emma had created at school. Sophie and Emma, dressed in matching red outfits, dashed around the room offering homemade cookies they'd baked earlier with Claire. Their bright laughter mingled with the soft Christmas carols playing in the background. "Watch out for the tree," Emily called playfully, adjusting the wreath on the door for what felt like the 10th time. Over the last year, her entire demeanor had transformed, the haunted look in her eyes replaced by a luminous serenity. Claire sat in her favorite armchair, knitting yet another pair of mittens for her endless stash of Christmas gifts. Her face, etched by hard years, now radiated a tranquil joy. Jack and Thomas stood by the fireplace, sipping whiskey and speaking in low tones. Their relationship, although still mending, had found a new balance. Thomas, in particular, was a changed man. Months of counseling, coupled with genuine effort to regain everyone's trust, had smoothed his once harsh edges. "Dad, Uncle Jack," Emma called, running toward them with a storybook in her hands. "Read us that story again." Thomas and Jack exchanged a smile. It was a recent tradition, telling the family's story in a gentler, more magical way for the kids. "Once upon a time," Jack began, lifting Emma onto his lap while Sophie hopped onto Thomas's, "there were two magical princesses who lived in an enchanted castle, with Grandma the fairy godmother," Sophie added, making Claire chuckle from her chair. "Exactly," Thomas continued, voice warm. They were surrounded by love and magic, until one day a lost knight found them. Uncle Jack, the twins chorused, giggling. Emily moved closer, perched on the arm of Claire's chair. They shared a glance laden with memories, reflecting on how far they'd come since that frosty night Claire found 2 abandoned babies. "And do you know what the strongest magic of all was?" Jack asked. "Love," the girls answered, already knowing this part by heart. "That's right," Thomas said, his voice unsteady with emotion. "Love that turned a band of strangers into a family." The doorbell rang, announcing the last wave of guests, close friends who had become extensions of this unusual family. Soon the living room was full, the aroma of Claire's Christmas dinner filling the air. Later, gathered around a table decked with candles and holly, Jack stood for a toast. "This year taught us a lot," he began, looking around at the faces of those he loved. "About forgiveness, second chances, and how love can forge bonds stronger than any hardship." Emily squeezed Claire's hand, tears glistening in her eyes. Thomas, seated between his daughters, looked equally moved. "We learned that family isn't just about blood or names," Jack went on. "It's about daily choices of love and protection, about making room in our hearts for more love, more understanding, and more forgiveness." "And more of Grandma Claire's cookies," Emma piped up, prompting general laughter. "Yes, Princess," Jack said, smiling. "Lots more of Grandma Claire's cookies. So here's to this extraordinary family we've built together, to the meetings fate arranges, the second chances love makes possible, and the future we'll continue shaping hand in hand." "To family," everyone echoed, raising their glasses, Sophie and Emma included, with cups of juice. After dinner, while the children played with their new gifts and the adults talked in smaller clusters, Thomas approached Emily by the window. "Thank you," he said softly, "for not letting my past mistakes keep the girls from having a complete family." Emily smiled, watching her daughters play. "They have enough love for all of us, always did." Across the room, Claire watched them contentedly. "Who would have thought," she said to Jack, "that cold night behind the supermarket would bring us all here?" Jack wrapped an arm around the woman who had become like a second mother. "You always knew love was the answer, didn't you?" "Love is always the answer," Claire replied, "even when the questions seem impossible." By midnight, after the other guests had left and the twins finally dozed off, though not before insisting on hanging an extra stocking on the fireplace just in case Santa missed anyone, the adults reconvened in the living room. Emily and Thomas sat side by side on the sofa, no longer as ex-lovers scarred by betrayal, but as parents united by love for their girls. Claire was in her armchair, knitting needles finally at rest. Jack leaned against the fireplace, gazing at his family with gratitude. "Sometimes," Thomas said, breaking the comfortable silence, "I have to pinch myself to believe this is real, that I deserve to be part of it." "It's not about deserving," Claire replied gently. "It's about choosing to be better every day." "And you've made a good choice," Jack added, smiling at his brother. Emily stood and walked over to the Christmas tree. Among the many ornaments, one in particular stood out. A small wooden house painted by the twins, with 6 little stick figures representing each family member. "From an abandoned house," she said softly, "to a real home." While snow continued to fall outside, blanketing the city in a pure white covering of renewal, this extraordinary family celebrated not just Christmas, but also the remarkable journey that had brought them here. Secrets uncovered, hearts mended, and love multiplied. Because in the end, it wasn't about the abandoned house or the missing years or even the mistakes of the past. It was about how love, real and unconditional, can transform strangers into family, pain into healing, and sad endings into new beginnings. And this was only the beginning of their story.